Hello everyone, it's Mr. Kimball again. I am bringing you your Friday lecture video. There will be another video coming at you on Monday, but today is Friday, I've lost track of the date here. It's April something, April like 25th, 24th, and we're here to learn about Wolfgang Mozart. Just as a reminder for you, you can send me a short message through LiveGrades telling me a few things you learned from this presentation and or Monday's presentation. And that's one of your assignments for this week, so you can get a few points that way. Remember that the only thing you can do is help your grade right now, so it can't hurt to send me a few things. So with that in mind, we will get started with today's lecture on Wolfgang Mozart. Some things you need to know about Wolfgang Mozart. He's one of the most renowned classical composers ever. Very popular name. He was born January 27th, 1756 in Austria, and he was a musician known well for playing the harpsichord, piano, but he could actually play multiple instruments. He started playing in public at the age of 6, and he composed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of works, including sonatas, symphonies, masses, chamber music, concertos, and operas. His compositions were noticeably marked by vivid emotion and sophisticated textures. And we learned a good deal about textures. That would be like monophonic, homophonic, polyphonic. So he composed a lot of polyphonic works. He was the son of Leopold and Maria Pearl Mozart, and Leopold was actually already a fairly successful composer, albeit not as successful as Mozart would end up becoming. He was a violinist and an assistant concertmaster, which means basically the second best violin in an orchestra at the Salzburg court. So the concertmaster is what we call the first violin. So whoever has the first violin part, if they're the first chair and on that part, they're the concertmaster. So the assistant concertmaster would then be the second chair. They get to warm up the orchestra, tune them. They actually get paid almost as well as a conductor of an orchestra does, maybe even more sometimes. So they're very good musicians. Wolfgang Mozart had one sister. Her name was Maria Anna. Leopold started, that's his father. Leopold started Maria Anna on keyboard when she was 7, and Wolfgang looked to her musically at the age of 3. So when he was 3 and she was 7 or older, Wolfgang was kind of learning from watching his sister. Mimicking her playing, Wolfgang quickly began to show a really strong understanding of chords and major and minor tonality and steady tempo and things like that. So with that in mind, Leopold really pushed Mozart into lessons. He was a devoted and task-oriented teacher to both his children, meaning they set a goal, they set a task for a day, and they worked on it until that task was completed. He made the lessons fun, but also insisted on a strong work ethic and perfection. I don't think we've talked about Beethoven quite yet. We probably should have talked about him first, but he was much different than Beethoven's father. We'll talk more about Beethoven's father on a different video, maybe on Mondays, but Beethoven's father was pretty abusive and kind of used negative reinforcement and physical punishment to make Beethoven a good musician. Wolfgang showed signs of excelling beyond his father's teachings, meaning that he was going to become much better of a musician than his father was at an early age of 5 with some of his compositions. He demonstrated an outstanding ability on the harpsichord, which is like the piano, and the violin. And then on top of that, he added the full piano, the organ, and the viola. Sorry, that's spelled a little backwards there. So this brings us to an interesting question. What's the difference between a violin and a viola? This is something we talked about in our string unit. So if you remember correctly, a violin is actually smaller, and it's normally covering the melody, and the viola is actually a little bit larger, but not quite as large as the cello. You can still hold it and tuck it under your chin, but it is tuned a little bit differently, a little bit larger, is more of a middle instrument. So we get to, in 1762, Mozart was 6 years old, and his family traveled to the courts of Paris, London, The Hague, and Zurich just to show off Mozart and his sister. They were performing as child prodigies, and people kind of came and from all around just to listen to these guys play. 1769, Mozart and his father departed from Salzburg for Italy. However, his sister did not join them as she was close to marriageable age, so she would have been probably 17 or so. And according to the custom of the time, she was really not permitted to show her artistic talent in public. Women at that time could show their artistic talent up until they were about marriageable age, and then they would have to go and be married to somebody and kind of take care of the family. While in Rome, Wolfgang heard Gregorio Allegri's Miserere performed once in the Sistine Chapel, and this is absolutely amazing. He wrote out the entire score, so that means every single part that was performed in that piece. He wrote out the entire score from memory, and really only went back to listen and correct a few minor errors. So just kind of imagine listening to a song on the radio, and you are then, and you've never heard the song before, but you listen to it once, and then you're able to sit down and write down all of the lyrics to that song after one listening. And maybe you had a few tiny errors, but you got all the lyrics right. Now, this is what Mozart did, only instead of the lyrics, he got every single instrumental, every single piano, every single part right in there. He knew the music so well and could remember it that he could write the part out entirely from memory. Mozart then gained a job as an assistant concertmaster in Salzburg under the Archbishop von Colloredo. He really hated this job because he thought, I can write out entire pieces from memory. I'm a child prodigy. I'm way too good to be an assistant concertmaster. So at the age of 21, he set on a different trip for employment. The Archbishop wouldn't give Leopold permission to travel, so Mozart took his sister with him instead. Mozart's mother died while he was away, and she died in 1778. And at this time, his father negotiated a better job for his son, and the kids returned to Salzburg. So basically, Mozart went out to go look for a better job. His mother died while he was away, and his father, kind of being alone, ended up convincing a few people that Wolfgang did deserve a better job, and that allowed for him to return back to Italy. In the summer of 1781, rumors circulated about a marriage to Constance, so Mozart was supposedly marrying this person. Knowing his father, though, would disapprove of the marriage and the interruption in his musical career, Mozart wrote his father saying, no, I am not marrying anybody. However, then in December, he did ask for his father's blessing, and the couple ended up marrying in 1782, and Leopold did finally say it's okay and consent to the marriage. In that marriage, Wolfgang had 6 children, but unfortunately only 2 survived infancy, and that was Carl Thomas and Franz Xavier. And yeah, so really high infant mortality rate back then, so only 2 of his kids ended up surviving. In 1783, Mozart became enthralled with the work of Bach and Handel, and in turn, this resulted in several compositions in the Baroque style. You can hear those from the Magic Flute and the Symphony No. 41 finale. And yeah, those are really cool pieces. I encourage you to go listen to. Mozart tended to believe that he should enjoy a lavish lifestyle similar to that of the aristocrats, even though music and especially composers were really not receiving that kind of pay. They were more middle class, if that. And Mozart thought with his talent he should be the richest person alive. In 1784, Mozart went through the most prolific performing period of his life, and in a 5-week period he appeared in 22 concerts, including 5 he produced and performed as the soloist. Audiences were said to be given the opportunity of witnessing the transformation and perfection of a major musical genre. And at that time, Mozart began keeping something that was kind of odd for the day, but we're really appreciative of now, his own catalog of music, indicating an awareness that he was pretty much aware that he was going to be really, really famous one day. So he wanted to, keep track of all of his works, so that way 100 years later we could appreciate him. And the guy was pretty full of himself, if you think about it. Mid-1780s, Mozart's lifestyle began taking a financial toll. He tried to get a job as a court-appointed musician, but it proved difficult because of the court's musical preferences to Italian musicians, and of course, he was from Austria, so that wouldn't work. Then Kapellmeister Antonio Salieri, who, if you've watched the movie Amadeus, you kind of get this dramatic feeling that there's this rivalry between Salieri and Mozart. So there's this rumor that Mozart's general rivalry and mistrust of Italian musicians led to a rather strong hatred of Salieri. Because Mozart was getting passed up for jobs, because people preferred Italian musicians, Mozart kind of held a vendetta because of that, and Antonio Salieri was an Italian musician, and there was kind of that rivalry there because of it. Decades after Mozart's death, though, rumors circulated that Salieri actually poisoned him. That's, I believe, what was kind of hinted at in the movie Amadeus. However, this is probably not true. It's dramatic, and people like a good story like that, but it's probably just doesn't have much truth to it. There's no evidence backing it up. So though both composers were often in contention for the same job and public attention, there's really little evidence that their relationship was anything other than a professional rivalry. Mozart did end up dying, though, at a very young age, the age of 35, and it's said that his star never really burned out. He was ultra famous, but his lifestyle just kind of caught up with him, and yeah. Unsure about the cause of death. There are many different speculations. Like I said, there's the really out there one that Salieri poisoned him. That one's probably not true. Malaria or miliary fever, rheumatic fever, and possibly alcoholism. Like I said, his lifestyle was pretty out there. May be the cause of death. And I think Amadeus also referenced his alcoholism and how that kind of took a toll. So his funeral, this is kind of the amazing thing, his funeral drew very few mourners, and he was buried in a common grave. So the guy that strived for so much fame and fortune actually was buried in a common grave that really wasn't all that marked, and yeah, only nobility at the time would be buried in marked graves and enjoy public mourning ceremonies. So because he wasn't a nobleman, he just kind of died like all the rest of us, and he was just buried in a normal hole in the ground, I guess. So it's pretty astounding. Now, of course, today we can appreciate the fame and the fortune and the compositional amazement that was Mozart, but back then, it just wasn't all that big of a deal, I guess, to lose somebody like that. So it's sort of ironic in a way. So that's it for Mozart. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys learned a thing or two, and I will be back to talk with you all on Monday. As always, you can send me a message if you have any questions or if you need anything, and I will be looking forward to hearing from you.